Ilara Voss had always known she was different from her stepsister, not in a way that made her proud, in a way that made her invisible. Vivian was the kind of woman people noticed the moment she walked into a room. She had bright eyes, a loud laugh, and a way of standing that made her look like she had already won whatever she was competing for. Ilara was quieter. She preferred the garden to the great hall, herbs to jewels, and honest silence to clever conversation. She had grown up in the same pack house, eaten at the same table, and slept under the same roof as Vivian, but the two of them had never truly shared the same world. That became most clear on the night of the claiming ceremony. The claiming ceremony was the most sacred tradition in the Iron Moon realm. Once every generation, the Alpha King would be brought forward under the full moon, blindfolded as tradition required, and guided by the bond alone. A true mate bond was not something that could be faked. It carried its own scent, its own warmth, a pull so deep it moved through the body like a second heartbeat. The Alpha King would follow that scent, stop before the one woman who carried it, and in that moment, before the entire pack, the bond would be confirmed. A crown of white moonstone would be placed on her head. She would become Luna. Ilara had felt the bond since the day she turned 18. It had arrived quietly, the way important things often do, not as a crash but as a hum, a steady, low certainty that lived somewhere behind her ribs. She had never told anyone about it, not even her father. She was not a woman who spoke about things she could not yet explain. She simply carried it, lived with it, and waited. She had waited 3 years. Now the night had finally come. She stood in the great hall among hundreds of pack members, wearing a simple silver dress her father had given her, her dark hair pinned back, her hands folded in front of her. She was calm. She had been calm all day. She trusted the bond. She trusted the truth of it. She did not trust her stepsister. What Ilara did not know, what no one in the pack knew except Vivian and her mother, was that 2 weeks before the ceremony, Vivian had made a visit to the Ashvale territory. The Ashvale were not part of the 5 main packs. They lived in the eastern hills and were known, quietly and with some fear, for trading in things that could not be bought anywhere else. Vivian had come home from that visit, carrying a small glass bottle filled with a pale, almost colorless liquid. It was a scent-masking elixir. Vivian's mother had explained the plan simply. The bond worked through scent. If Vivian wore Ilara's natural mate scent, the Alpha King would stop before the wrong woman. He would believe the bond had led him. The crowd would witness it. The Elder Council would confirm it. And by the time anyone thought to question it, a crown would already be sitting on Vivian's head. They had taken a piece of Ilara's clothing from her room to extract the scent. Ilara had never noticed it was missing. The ceremony began just after midnight. King Kalen Dravith was brought into the hall by his beta. He was tall, still, and quiet, in a way that matched the weight of his title. He wore no crown that night, as tradition required. He was blindfolded with white silk. The hall went completely silent, as he was guided to the center of the room. Then he was released. He stood alone, he breathed. He turned slowly. Ilara felt the pull the moment he turned in her direction. It moved through her like a warm current, and her breath caught in her throat. She stayed still. She waited. But then Kalen moved. He moved toward her, and then, without explanation, he shifted slightly to the left. Just a few feet, no more than that. He stopped in front of Vivian. Ilara's world went very quiet. The Elder Council moved forward. Kalen reached out and his hands found Vivian's. The crowd erupted. Someone near Ilara began to cry with joy. The Elder Council raised their voices to confirm the bond witnessed, the bond accepted, the bond sealed. The white moonstone crown was brought forward on a velvet cushion. Ilara watched it happen from where she stood. She watched the crown being lowered onto her stepsister's head. She watched Vivian smile, a smile that was not joy but victory. She watched her father in the crowd, confused, searching the room for her face. She did not let him find it. She turned and walked toward the back corridor before the celebrations could begin. She did not run. Running would have drawn attention. She walked steadily, the way she had always done things, quietly and without drama, until she was outside, until the cold night air hit her face, until the sounds of the celebration faded behind the trees. She stood there for a long moment under the moon. Then she began to walk. She did not go back for her things. She did not say goodbye to her father. She wrote him a single letter from the first town she reached, and told him only that she was safe and that she needed to go. She knew he would grieve. She also knew that if she stayed, she would not survive the grief herself. The pain of a denied bond was not something anyone in the pack spoke about openly, but every wolf knew what it was. It lived in the chest like a slow fire. It did not kill quickly, it simply burned. Ilara crossed out of Iron Moon territory by dawn and kept moving east. She ended up in a small town called Greyvale, far enough from the 5 packs that most of the people there were human or half-blooded, and no one asked questions about where someone had come from. She found a room above an old herbalist shop, and the woman who owned it, a quiet widow named Mrs. Hale, gave her work in exchange for the room and 2 meals a day. Ilara learned the trade quickly. She had always loved plants. She knew their names and their uses, and the particular smell of each one. Mrs. Hale said she had a gift for it. Ilara said nothing and kept working. She did not shift. She locked that part of herself away and tried not to think about it. She called herself Lara Gray in Greyvale, used only her first name with most people, and built a small, careful life around routine and honesty and the simple satisfaction of useful work. She was not happy, but she was not broken either. 3 years passed. Back in the Iron Moon realm, things had not gone the way Vivian had planned. A true mate bond, when real, fills a pack house with a particular kind of warmth. The Luna's presence settles the wolves around her, the way a fire settles a cold room. Pups sleep easier, elders breathe slower, the pack feels held. Vivian's presence produced none of this. Kalen knew it from the very first night, though he told no one. He was a king, and kings did not speak about what they felt before they understood it. He watched carefully instead. He watched how the pack responded to Vivian's presence, or rather, how it did not respond. He noticed the elder wolves growing quiet in a way that was not peaceful but uneasy. He noticed that the harvest ritual failed for the first time in 40 years. He noticed that when Vivian stood beside him in the great hall, his own wolf felt nothing. Not settled, not warm, not recognized. He began to carry a question he could not yet name. Then the Ashvale witch trials began. A kingdom-wide investigation into illegal enchantments had been growing quietly for years, and it finally reached the Iron Moon realm in the 3rd year of Vivian's reign as Luna. Investigators working on behalf of the Elder Council moved through the Eastern Territories and seized a large shipment of illegal elixirs. Among them was a supply of scent-masking elixir, rare enough that the investigators traced every transaction carefully. One transaction led back to Vivian's personal chambers. 2 empty bottles, 1 receipt, hidden poorly. 1 name on that receipt that matched a family member of the current Luna. The Elder Council was convened in private. Vivian's mother, faced with the evidence and the council's authority, collapsed within an hour of questioning and told them everything. The entire hall went silent when the council delivered their findings to Kalen. He sat very still through the entire report. He asked no questions. He made no sound. When the council finished, he thanked them formally, dismissed them, and sat alone in the throne room for a long time. He felt it then, clearly, for the first time in 3 years. The bond, the real one, not gone, not broken, just buried under the weight of a lie. It flickered back like a candle catching in a draft, small at first, then stronger, then undeniable. Somewhere, his true mate was alive. Somewhere, she had been carrying this alone for 3 years. He stood up. He walked to the throne and set his crown carefully on the seat. He walked out of the throne room, through the great hall, out the front doors of the pack house, and into the night. His beta, Dorian, found him at the eastern border 20 minutes later, standing at the tree line with his face turned into the wind. "My king," Dorian said carefully, "the council is waiting for direction on the Luna situation." "Handle it," Kalen said. "Strip the title. Follow the law. You know what to do." "And where are you going?" Kalen did not answer immediately. He was already tracking something on the wind, a thread, faint but real, east. "I am going to find the woman I should have found 3 years ago," he said. "Alone." Dorian opened his mouth. "Alone," Kalen said again. He left before dawn. It took him 3 days. 2 wrong towns, 1 long stretch of cold rain through the neutral territories, and 1 morning where he almost convinced himself he had lost the trail entirely. But the bond did not let go. It was not loud or demanding, it simply persisted, the way the truest things always do, quietly and without apology, pointing east. He arrived in Greyvale on the 4th morning. He found the herbalist's shop by following his nose down a narrow side street, the smell of dried lavender and pine resin, and something warmer beneath it, something that made his entire body go still the moment it reached him. He went around the side of the building to the garden. She was there. Alara Voss, who called herself Lara Gray in this town, was crouched in the back garden cutting stems of dried lavender, her dark hair loose around her shoulders, her hands steady and careful with the blade. She was wearing a plain gray coat and worn boots. She looked completely ordinary. She looked like someone who had spent 3 years learning how to disappear. She felt him before she saw him. She felt the warmth first, that same low hum from 3 years ago returning without warning, moving through her chest before her mind caught up. Her hands went still. The back of her neck prickled. She straightened slowly. Then she turned around. Kalen Dravith was standing at the garden gate. No crown, no escort, no ceremony. He was wearing a plain dark coat, his gray eyes fixed on her with an expression she had never seen on a king's face before. It was not authority, it was not command. It was something much more difficult to wear. It was shame. And beneath the shame, something careful and honest and asking. The bond hit them both at the same moment. Alara felt it like a wave breaking against a wall she had spent 3 years building, and the wall simply dissolved. Her breath left her in a quiet rush. Across the gate, she watched him close his eyes briefly, as if the force of it had moved through him too. Neither of them spoke for a long moment. "I know what was done to you," he said finally. His voice was low and rough in a way that had nothing to do with authority. "I know what you lost. I know I cannot give those years back." Alara looked at him for a long moment. She looked at his hands on the gate, at the absence of his crown, at the fact that he had come here alone. "Why are you here without your crown?" she asked. "Because I am not here as a king," he said. "I am here as the man who should have found you first. I am here because the bond led me to the wrong person for 3 years, and I did not know it, and that truth sits in me like a stone, and I needed you to know that I know it." Alara was quiet. She looked down at the lavender in her hands. Then she set it down on the garden bench and opened the gate. "Come inside," she said. "I will make tea." She made him sit across from her at Mrs. Hale's small kitchen table, and she asked him everything she had been carrying for 3 years. She asked him what the ceremony had felt like. She asked him when he first knew something was wrong. She asked him what he had done when he found out the truth. She asked him what had happened to Vivian. He answered every question, simply and directly, without performing dignity or making excuses. He told her that Vivian's title had been stripped, and she had been exiled from the realm. He told her that the Elder Council had rewritten the enchantment laws. He told her that her father had been informed she was alive and that he was well. When he was finished answering, she was quiet for a long time. "I spent 3 years trying to break the bond," she said finally. "Just by willing it away. It never worked." "No," he said. "It would not. I was not trying because I hated you," she said carefully. "I want you to understand that. I was trying because it hurt too much to feel it and believe it meant nothing." "It meant everything," he said. "It just took me too long to understand what I was feeling." She looked at him across the table. He looked back. Neither of them looked away. "I do not want a crown," she said. "I never did." "I know," he said. "I do not want a ceremony." "Then we will not have one." "I want to be chosen," she said. "Not by tradition, not by scent, not by law, by choice, every day, by a person who sees me and decides, on that day, that I am worth choosing." Kalen was quiet for a moment. Then he reached across the small table and placed his hand, open and still, on the wood between them. Not grabbing, not demanding, just offering. "Then consider yourself chosen," he said, "today, and I will come back tomorrow and choose you again, if you will allow it." Alara looked at his hand for a long moment. Then she placed her hand in his. 3 months later, under a full moon, with no blindfold, and no crowd, and no ceremony, Kaelin placed a crown of white moonstone in Alara's hands and let her decide what to do with it. She held it for a long moment, then she put it on herself. The pack felt it when she walked into the great hall. Every wolf in the room felt the warmth settle over them, like something long awaited finally arriving. The elder wolves exhaled. The pups went still. The harvest ritual that year produced the largest yield in 40 years. A true Luna had come home. And the bond, which had never truly broken, which had waited 3 years and crossed neutral territories, and refused to be extinguished by a stolen elixir or a stolen crown, finally rested. It had always known the way. It had simply waited for the right person to follow it.